Anyway, yeah, thank you all very much for being here today, and obviously kudos for the organizers of the conference or the meetup or the side event. So my name is Alex. I come from Parity. Parity is the company which built Substrate, which is a Rust-based framework to actually deploy blockchains. And my current role is actually infrastructure and tooling lead in ecosystem relations team, or the team has changed a lot of names previously, but I have a very in-depth and close, I would say, role and experience with actually working with developers, but also teams who have already built great products leveraging Substrate, or nowadays it's called Polkadot SDK. So just for a quick second, a question here. Does anyone have experience working on Polkadot and maybe even Polkadot SDK? Yeah? How would you rate it? What's your score from 1 to 10? 5? 8? Cool. Okay, I'll just a little heads up. I'm not a developer. This presentation will solely focus on product and kind of maybe even a couple of business cases, but a little bit of code as well. But then, for very specific technical questions, I'm probably not going to know the answer. But again, talking to developers gave me some experience to talk about it with confidence for sure. So just a quick overview about Polkadot architecture and why does all of this matter is that basically Polkadot was one of the first ecosystems that actually introduced the app chain model with one single chain as the relay, which is actually serving other chains through shared security, obviously, and shared infrastructure, which is, if you think about it, the core thesis of rollups, obviously. So I think personally that Polkadot and Parity missed out on building a narrative around rollups. Since essentially just a quick introduction here is that, if I don't fall, is that basically the relay chain has its own validators, but also parachains, which are application dedicated chains in Polkadot, also have their own validators, which are called collators. So basically the transactions happening on parachains are actually being validated and executed on the relay chain. So why is this important? Just because when you combine something such as Substrate as building blockchains in a very quick and easy way, plus a lot of benefits to actually get a part of the ecosystem, which is giving you a lot from the business perspective, from actually launching a product and going to market, you are actually getting a pretty neat value proposition to actually build on Polkadot, right? Just an overview of a couple of projects. The biggest one right now, or that is launching in a couple of days, is the biggest gaming project in Ethereum that actually transitioned from Ethereum to Polkadot. It's called Mythical Games. So basically, they are one of the parachains, and they will also feature multiple parachains for different use cases to actually enhance this entire thing. Again, with the shared piece of infrastructure and security. So from Polkadot came Substrate, just because in order to deploy a specific Substrate-based chain or a parachain, you need a framework to actually do so. If you go ahead and search the terms Polkadot, Substrate, even Ink and some other stuff, you might actually see a lot of, I would say, fractionalized content and branding, just because Substrate got its own brand, which was a terrible mistake in my opinion, and I come from Polkadot ecosystem. I will say a lot of things today which some people at Parity might even criticize me, but anyway, I'm just being honest. So the thing is that Substrate is a modular, flexible, and extensible framework for building blockchains. The core principle of Substrate is to actually reuse the battle-tested or pre-audited templates or libraries while building custom components that matter the most. So I'll dive in deeper a little bit more of what is the core thesis and the core components of Substrate. Obviously, we have palettes, which are Rust-based code with specific modules and specific logic implementation. And then the specific palettes combined together are actually forming a runtime, which is acting as a brain of a specific chain containing all the functionalities that you would need for a chain to perform. Obviously, this is very customizable and depending on your use case. So for example, if you need staking, you can develop your own or reuse the existing staking palette, or a collective governance parent, grandpa for the block finalization and execution, the contracts palette, which I'll definitely talk more about later, assets palette if you need fungible and non-fungible tokens, etc. So all standards are basically defined here, or if they're lacking, you can build your own and kind of publish them open source and say like, hey guys, everyone at Polkadot, this is useful, go ahead, use my palette or my runtime, the complete chain logic that I've built. Why, I mean, this thesis is important. This is the business slide. Obviously, like up until rollup as a service, blockchain as a service, and kind of app chain thesis, it was very hard to develop a chain, publish it, and make sure that it's interconnected with other chains and also secure enough in order to actually build a business value or business proposition on top of it. So this is what Substrate definitely eliminates. Substrate plus Polkadot. Again, if you are a good enough fundraiser or a business person, probably you can make up for your own security, have enough resources to build your own validators and security, and basically, I don't know, if you have contacts at layer 0 or other kind of GMPs and cross-chain protocols, you can make sure that you know, you're not isolated, but still, again, for quick deployment of chains, of blockchains, you can still use Substrate. You don't have to use Polkadot's pre-arranged cross-chain and security model, which is pretty much something that we'll talk about after this slide. So like maybe the question, so how are people using palettes and runtimes literally for anything? So it's really like a game of like, what do you want to combine together and what logical implementation you would need to build the use case. So there's a lot of projects building. There's infra projects, there's NFT projects. If anyone wants to be connected or specifically wants to talk about one use case, I can connect you to any of the parachains in the ecosystem building on this. From unique network we've seen yesterday on the Polkadot day to like Hyperbridge to Energy Web for energy, like to mythical games for gaming, Moonbeam for smart contracts, it's literally anything. This is good, but also bad at the same time, just because you need to have enough expertise to achieve any piece of success on this. So building on Substrate, obviously I don't want to start and talk about all of these things. So I would say that the core thesis is that Substrate is very extensible and composable. It's based on Rust. And the biggest value proposition that it actually gives you is that you have a lot of templates to work with. So usually, I think 99 out of 100 projects start with the frame palettes, which are just pre-built palettes for staking, governance, tokens, etc., that they're actually a part of every blockchain out there. Obviously, you can abstract them away. You don't have to work with the complexity of defining the logic for everything. So like the frame palettes is something that is pretty much used for your own sake. Choosing your consensus, again, highly dependent on whether you want to be a part of Polkadot ecosystem or not. Regarding the runtime upgrades, this is probably the biggest kind of security issue in Polkadot, just because in order for you to upgrade your own runtime as a parachain on Polkadot, you would need to like talk to every piece of parachains and Polkadot relay chain in the ecosystem. Obviously, there's a pretty good infrastructure to build upon that. So a lot of primitives, tooling, and infrastructure projects in Polkadot space if you want to get a hold of off-chain data or build a bridge, define the messaging between other smart parachains through a cross-chain messaging protocol called XCM. So like there's a lot of prerequisites you can actually build upon. Obviously, then this is what I specifically want to talk about. Like, in order to use Substrate, I really want to emphasize this. And again, this is the very exact thing why people at Parity will probably hate me. So, if you want to use Substrate but not become a Polkadot parachain, you can still do that. So, very, very, very highlighted in highlighted text. You don't need to become a Polkadot parachain or become a part of Polkadot ecosystem if you want to leverage Substrate to build your tech stack. The thing is that if you go to market and if you go and kind of sense check things like how is market performing, you can actually see a whale, for example, if you know about the project, the data availability, I would say unification layer for Web3, they are a Polkadot SDK chain or a Substrate-based chain. However, they have not leveraged the protocol to become a Polkadot parachain, which is called Cumulus, which is, again, giving the consensus mechanism, shared security, and stepping that kind of barrier to entry into actually becoming a Polkadot parachain. The thing is, a whale, if you go ahead and research a little bit more about the tech stack, the 80% of what they claim that they want to achieve and what their infra is thanks to Substrate and thanks to Polkadot. They have the nominated proof of stake mechanism. They have leveraged babe and grandpa finality and finalization protocols. At the end, also the small dot light client connectivity to the nodes and to the on-chain data. Pretty much there's a lot of things you can reuse from Polkadot even if you don't want to become a Polkadot parachain. If you want to do so, my idea, and this is what I've been very transparent and vocal about in Parity, is that we need to work with and support Substrate-based chains which are not leverage Cumulus to become a part of the ecosystem. So, as you wish. I will be able to help you anyway. If you want to become a parachain or not, just let me know. Building on top of Polkadot, building on top of Substrate-based chain. So, basically, two options. I'm not sure how we are on time. I want to leave some space for questions, but anyway, you can deploy the whole runtime module for a single parachain. You go ahead, see the flaw in Moonbeam palette or Moonbeam runtime. You go ahead, suggest a change, publish it open source, go to governance, ask Money to actually do this, or retroactively ask Money to do so. You contact Moonbeam, say, like, guys, this is a better implementation of the assets palette or governance palette, whatever. Go ahead and take it. Okay, palettes are Rust-based. If you're proficient in Rust and you actually see a value proposition doing so, go ahead and do it. I would highly encourage to do so. You can also deploy smart contracts on parachains. Currently, there are 50 parachains available in the Polkadot space. So you can go ahead and basically either deploy a dApp or just go ahead and reuse some of the contracts. I will talk about all different frameworks and different languages that other parachains can leverage, and you too can leverage as a developer. But for example, Moonbeam, so probably you know already what is a palette. There is a palette called Frontier Palette. Frontier Palette is the EVM compatibility palette. So if Moonbeam, or tomorrow you as a parachain project, use this palette, you will allow the developers that want to become a part of your ecosystem, such as Moonbeam. If you implement DVM palette, you're giving out the capability for developers to start developing on Solidity on your chain. The thing is that there's a lot of additional tooling to wrap up, and I will talk about this somewhere. Yes, here. Moonbeam smart contracts, EVM compatibility right out of the box with the Frontier EVM palette. So it's minimal change in code to deploy. It's literally one or two tools. Again, if you want to start, if you're a Solidity developer, want to hop into Rust or hop into a new ecosystem that acts totally differently than this, then you can start in this way and then slowly phase towards the native smart contract language, which is, again, Rust-based. It's domain-specific. It's not for general purpose, obviously, but it compiles in WebAssembly. So if you want to make that step, Polkadot is a pretty good ecosystem and convinced me that this is a pretty good thesis to follow. Ink has been developed initially by Parity. However, due to the decentralization that happened, which I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, a lot of shitty things happened. So Ink is now outside of Parity, community owned. It's at version 5.0. Two teams, if you want to develop things on Ink, or whether you are a Solidity developer or just want to start, Rust, or want to start with Ink, you can contact A-Star or LF0 because they are co-owning kind of this from a community perspective. A slide back, like I mentioned again, there's a lot of options to begin with. Again, if you don't, the ideal kind of way to start is probably, based on my data, EVM or Ethereum developer starts with EVM, parachain, smart contracts, quickly moves to Ink, then goes from Ink to building pallets, deploys a runtime, deploys a chain. If you don't want to just, this is a natural kind of thing for me, and this is what Polkadot wants as well. It wants more chains, and I really want to specifically talk about why there are not more chains in the ecosystem at this point in time. Why only 50 in the last 4 years, or 3.5 years? Because it was very hard to become a parachain in a way that not from the technical perspective, but more from the economic and resources perspective, because you needed to go to auction and make sure that you're getting the core time or block space from the relay chain assigned to you for a specific amount of time. You all know what is block space. This is not a presentation about block space, but it's the biggest and most important unit in the entire ecosystem and industry. So basically, we ditched the whole idea of auctions and are lowering down the entry barrier. We're not calling those chains anymore. We're calling them threads or para threads, which are just very flexible and on-demand piece of infrastructure that you can deploy leveraging the technology I've just presented. So what will change is that a lot more people will be able to dip into that shared security and shared infra model from Polkadot Relay Chain, but in which way? There are 3 things. One is runtime templates, and there are 2 teams which I would highly suggest checking out what you're building on Polkadot. One is OpenZeppelin, pretty, I would say, well-known. So they have built a lot of runtime templates which you can just reuse from scratch. So like literally maybe change a thing or 2, use it, deploy, you would have your own functioning chain if you know how to set up the binaries and chain spec and deploy the chain itself. This is why we have the collator setup and deployment, which is pretty much automatized or automated through Zeev, Portico, or Hugobyte with Kurtosis. And also the biggest thing which changed the whole narrative in Polkadot ecosystem is no more auctions. Just a little piece of information is that like the first parachain actually needed $50 million in DOT to become a parachain. The latest one needed $50,000 in Varch to actually become a part of the ecosystem. With this whole change of block space as on-demand block space or on-demand core time thesis, there are no more auctions, and you can basically go ahead, build your runtime template, do your coding stuff. You can build your infrastructure similar to going to Quick Node and getting that local node or whatever, and you can access them and manage core time through Elastic and RegionX. You can literally buy it and renew it every month. If you don't want to renew it every month, it's literally like a subscription. So for every sale that happens, you buy that core time, you will actually be billed some standard, like $1,000 per month. If your usage increases and if more users are actually going to your chain and performing actions, you would pay more. If not, you're paying the threshold, the minimum. So it's literally using AWS. OpenZeppelin actually launched, shared this tweet from my colleague at Web3 Foundation. It took about 3 hours to launch an on-demand parachain. Awesome. There's a lot of, this is Zeev to actually build out the whole chain spec in just one UI, and then this is RegionX to go ahead, check out that sales and buy the core time. So it's literally like a very seamless process. You can deploy a blockchain and you can have shared security, you can have shared infrastructure in one day. I'm not, exaggerating on this one. One project that I need to talk about is called Pop CLI. What they're doing is very, very useful for this entire thesis. They are building out the binaries from just one CLI. So it's very, very, very intuitive to, I would say, start with if you want to develop things on Polkadot. Obviously, these are some of the results. Compiling the code, it's from one single UI. Again, it's or CLI, sorry. So it's very. Again, this is OZ Parachain. This is the runtime template which you mentioned. You literally just download Rust crates. You take this open source thing. You build everything in one CLI, and that's it. Obviously, I have 5 more minutes left. But if you want to dive deeper into Ink as a native language on Polkadot, which is Rust-based and script-based language, again, domain-specific, not very general. There's a lot of documentation. And by the way, PopCLI, this team, Rogue, they are actually also improving ink. So like if you want to start developing and you want to start with ink as well, PopCLI or Rogue team are actually the way to go. And yes, okay, so pretty much that's it for me. Just a quick question. Are there any questions for me? Yes, go ahead.
I have probably a very small question. Is it possible as a DApp developer for Polkadot to never touch Solidity?
Yes. Yes.
Why do you hate Solidity?
Okay, no more questions? Cool. Okay.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.